Hi guys, welcome back to The Learning Gardener. If you're new here, my name is Pip. I am going into my second year of being a wannabe homesteader with a standard residential rental property plot. And I do actually have a freeze dryer. I'm very blessed to have a freeze dryer, which is currently working full time at the moment. And some of the reason it's working is, if I'm honest, because I'm scared to preserve and give myself botulism. But I wanted to make peach butter after seeing Three Rivers Homestead, and it just sounded so beautiful and amazing. And I thought, come on, buck up, champ, you can do this. So I went down to the local farmers market to pick up peaches and apricots because I recently went to an orchard to pick them and they were unavailable. So I started off with the peaches and I diced them up and weighed them out without the pits in them. And I was surprised by how quickly this apricot butter thickened. Because it thickened so fast, and because this is my very first time preserving anything, I was a little bit confused as to if I'd done something wrong or if things were going well, and perhaps it just wasn't going to take me as long as I had anticipated. I did prepare a number of jars in excess of what the recipe called for, just in case I ended up with excess. But the longer I got into this process, the more I realized that there was no way that this was going to turn into as much butter as the recipe called for. It turned into less than half of what it called for in terms of jars. So I was a little bit confused about what I had done wrong and whether I then put the full allotment of sugar in, even though I was ending up with half the amount of liquid that I was supposed to. So I did a panic and got on a Facebook homesteading group in Australia and asked, and it was like 11 o'clock at night, so I didn't have much hope for an answer. So I just put half the sugar in, and thankfully someone got back to me later to tell me that that was the right thing to do, given that somehow I had ended up with half the amount of liquid that I was intending to. And then I got those jars into the pot to do my very first water bath canning. I was super nervous that I hadn't done the jars tight enough, because when people say fingertip tight, well, that's a huge varying degree of tightness to me, depending on what fingertip tight means to you. But I just got on with it and I put those jars on the table after they'd been in for, I think it was 10 minutes off the top of my head. And they had a little puddle of water on the lids, and I was wanting to wipe that off, but had seen other videos where they said just don't touch them and leave them alone for 24 hours. And I was so scared I was going to muck up the seal, this being my first time, that I just did not touch them and I left them for 24 hours. And because it was so late at night by the time these were finished, I didn't actually hear them pop because I went straight to bed. But the next day, sure enough, the lids had sealed and I was the proud owner of 3 jars of apricot butter. So the next day I started working on the peaches that I had gotten from the farmer's market, and I had to wear gloves because I had blanched the apricots to remove the skins, and I found that to be a fairly useless process in that you lost a good amount of apricots at the same time. So today I thought I would peel the peaches, and honestly this was also very time consuming, but when I had done the apricots, I had pushed my thumb into the middle to pull out the seed in the middle of the pit, and somehow it had sliced open and quite deeply both of my thumbs, and it was incredibly painful. So I felt like such a wimp and such a novice, but you know, this is life. So off we went with a couple of gloves on and a knife, and we peeled a zillion peaches to get enough done for peach butter. And it took forever, so I'm not in a real hurry to make it again, but I was super motivated. I found that one batch of canning and successful lid sealing was all I needed to become a canning junkie. The big difference with the peach butter that compared to the apricot butter was it needed to thicken quite a lot to actually get to a point where it was a spreadable consistency. So I had actually kind of allowed about the same time I had for the apricot butter. And once again, I found myself doing this at night. And so the hours felt like they wore on incredibly slowly as I waited for this butter to thicken. And eventually it thickened kind of enough. I probably really could have gone a little bit more. But once again, it wasn't going to be enough to fill the exact amount of jars that they had recommended in the ball canning guide. To be fair, it was only like 3/4 of a jar off what they recommended, but still I had excess jars prepared just in case I ended up with excess butter. The freeze dryer once again whirring away in the background quite loudly. I got to filling these jars, and it suddenly occurred to me that because they had taken a lot longer than I had anticipated, I was not actually going to be around for the 24-hour lid test. I was going to be in Sydney for 36 hours, and I mean, really at this point there was no going back, so I just had to clean the rims, get the lids on, and pop these into the pot to do the water bath canning and get them done, because I was having to get up to go to Sydney in just a couple of hours. It was quite late by the time I finished these. I think it was like 11:30. But it's so satisfying and so addictive that I was just really enjoying the process. The only thing that has thrown me with my first foray into preserving is how much sugar goes into these things. And like, I was having a discussion with my dentist because I've had a lot of dental issues, and we were talking about it's the acidity in the mouth that is a problem. So things like lemon water and things like that, because they're high in acid, they're still not great for your teeth, even if you're trying to get away from, let's say, sodas. So it made me think that these recipes are all acidic, because that's why you can water bath can them. And they've got a lot of sugar in them, so I don't actually know how healthy they are. I mean, I know I'm not going to be chugging peach butter by the cup, but still, it made me think about it. But at the end of the day, I had these beautiful jars that were prepared of apricot butter and peach butter. So I had 3 of apricot and 7 of peach, and I was proud as punch. I would love to know what you first canned and if it started a canning addiction for you. I feel like I really want to get more jars on my pantry shelves as soon as possible. I'd also love to know how you guys feel about the sugar content in preserves, and kind of like how healthy you guys actually think this is. And yeah, if you guys are conflicted as well, please let me know below in the comments. I would love to hear your opinions. Thanks for hanging out with us while we wrestled with our first preserves today. I really appreciate you guys spending the time with us, and thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.